Welcome to Lunch with Leaders, the podcast where we explore what it takes to lead, thrive, and create lasting impact. I'm Adaeze Iloeje-Udeogalanya, a TEDx speaker, leadership strategist, and the founder of African Women in STEM. Each episode features insightful conversations with innovators, trailblazers, and leaders from around the world who are transforming cultures, redefining leadership, and shaping the future of work. Together, we'll share the stories, strategies, and mindsets that will empower women in STEM to amplify their visibility, influence, and impact. So if you're ready to lead boldly, amplify your voice, and help influence what leadership looks like for women in STEM, hit follow, share this podcast, and join us every week for impactful conversations, powerful stories, and practical strategies. Our guest today is Dr. Seema Handu. Dr. Seema is a passionate global health advocate with extensive experience in maternal and neonatal health, midwifery education, and simulation-based training. She leads impactful initiatives with Pronto International in India, collaborating with government and organizations to improve healthcare systems. Seema has worked on pioneering programs integrating midwifery models of care, advancing respectful maternity care, and mentoring healthcare professionals. Her prior expertise spans drug development, clinical trials, and regulatory filings, reflecting a multidisciplinary approach to health equity. As a visionary leader and strategist, Seema is committed to driving innovation and partnerships that enhance access to quality healthcare worldwide. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
This has been interesting, but I'm glad we are able to have this conversation because you are an amazing woman, incredibly accomplished. And today on this podcast, we hope to learn so much from you. So I'm going to start with,
Okay.
you said your career has been guided by one question, which is how can science and empathy work together to save lives? And I would like to know, where did that question come from? How did you start asking yourself that? And how has it shaped the way you lead and how you make tough decisions in your career?
So first of all, thank you, Adaeze, for having me here. It's wonderful to be talking to you and really appreciate the work you are doing. Coming back to the question you asked, that question actually came from a place of curiosity and restlessness. Many of us are restless people. So I began my career in the pharmaceutical R&D and in the labs surrounded by experiments, protocols, and clinical trials. But even back then, I would always ask myself, how does all of this science reach the person who actually needs it? Later, when I co-founded a company that built data standards for drug submissions, which are now used globally for drug submissions to the FDA, I saw at that time how systems can make or break access. In global health, I saw how empathy, truly understanding people's lives and what they need, determines whether an intervention will succeed or not and to what extent. I also realized over the years that I love bringing order to disorder in any situation. So that speaks to systems that need to be developed, implemented, and then sustained. So that question has become my compass or my mantra. It reminds me that saving lives isn't just about innovation, it's about integration. And when science, systems, and empathy align, that's when true transformation happens.
I like that you said that because sometimes when we are solving problems, especially for us in STEM or as leaders, we sometimes forget that empathy plays a huge role in that.
Absolutely.
And it brings the humanity in that actually helps us do our jobs better, and especially in your field of healthcare. Because if I'm building a car, I know that a human being will drive the car, but in that instant, I may be removed from the humans. But for
Yeah.
you face that every day. And it's really critical and important that we are able to bring that empathy in. And I'm glad that you shared how that has shaped your career. This is something that I hope people are going to take away and realize that science,
Right?
STEM, leadership, and empathy intersect and work together really well to help us do a better job.
Absolutely, they really go hand in hand. Sometimes scientists can be so focused, and you do need that focus to be able to concentrate on what you're doing. But at the same time, if you cannot connect to people or understand why you're doing it only goes so far. So there's a place for everything. But if you can learn to connect to people, I think that will take you far.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing that. I am intrigued by healthcare. I'm intrigued by global health
Right.
because I think COVID was probably the first time that a lot of people in the world understood what it meant to focus on global health. It can seem so overwhelming and very complex. How do you, in your line of work, in your career, face the challenges that come with trying to improve healthcare for a lot of people? How have you been able to face that challenge in your career?
As you know, I have done a few things in my career. I haven't had a straight path.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the toughest but most meaningful challenges I faced was strengthening the labor room practices in the state of Bihar in India. And Bihar is a state that has a population of 130 million people, and its indicators across health, education, poverty, and employment are among the lowest in the country. When we set out to improve maternal and newborn outcomes, our initial plan focused on upgrading the clinical skills for nurses and doctors. But very quickly, it became clear that systems change isn't achieved just by technical training. It only works when trust and dignity are at the center. Remember, we are dealing with people here, not just systems, it's people who are actually at the center of all of this. Many of the labor room nurses we were training had several years of experience. They had been delivering babies long before our young trainers walked in. So their skepticism was understandable. It's like, what can they possibly teach us? So our approach needed to acknowledge that. We introduced simulation based training that placed these participants in highly realistic scenarios of complicated births. This helped bridge the gap. Instead of lectures, they were now experiencing emergencies in a safe environment and practicing how to respond. But we also realized that these skills, like the technical or clinical skills, were not enough. To truly transform care, we had to strengthen teamwork, mutual support, communication, and empathy, especially because these nurses were caring for some of the poorest women in the state. Underneath it all, these nurses themselves often felt undervalued. They were rarely respected within the system or in their own society and were working under extremely resource constrained conditions. So we adapted the program. We built in space for confidence building, reflection, and peer encouragement. We focused on restoring their sense of self worth and reminding them that they are central to saving lives. When that shift happened, the nurse who once doubted her own abilities stepped forward and confidently led a safe delivery. It meant more than any metric we could have reported. That expertise taught me that leadership in global health isn't about directing from the front, it's about listening deeply, co creating solutions, and honoring the lived experiences of the people closest to the problem. And above all, it taught me that human connection, not instruction, is what truly drives change.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I went to this summit yesterday and there was a section on healthcare and some of the initiatives that that particular organization did. And one of the things they said that really struck me was that when they went into the communities, they tried to not just come with their solutions to the community because even though they identified a problem, they needed to be able to talk to the people in this community and help them understand where they're coming from and then get their own perspective on that problem as well. Because that was the only way they could get a solution that made sense for the people they're trying to serve. Recognizing that the nurses you're working with, you're training, also they have this lived experience in addition to their technical experiences and bringing that in
Right?
because even if, as a leader, you're coming in, people are working with the patients day to day, so they have a lot to put in there. I appreciate you explaining that. That is really critical as we move forward in this world. We're seeing more and more that when we bring solutions, we tend to start from bottom up in a sense, if you want to say that, or at least from community then into whatever the organization is trying to do. You had mentioned earlier you pivoted a lot, you do so many different things. I'd like to know, in all these pivots that you've made, what has helped you sustain your vision, to maintain your voice, even when you're walking across different countries or different cultures or in different environments? And what advice do you have for people who are thinking, how do I maintain my vision and my voice as I navigate my career, pivot, move from company or country to country? What advice would you give them based on what you were able to do for yourself?
Okay. I look at the question that you asked, it is in two buckets. One is what has helped me sustain my voice and vision, and then what advice, right? So let's go through that. For me, there are three things that have really helped me sustain my voice and vision. That's having the sense of purpose, partnerships, and perspective, the three P's. Purpose has always been my anchor, especially when your work feels messy, slow, or just not going anywhere. That's when you need to stick to your purpose. This is my purpose, and that's why I will stick on this path. And then partnerships, they've always reminded me that leadership is never a solo act. It's built through trust, solidarity, and shared wins. And perspectives, knowing when to lean in, when to take a breath, it keeps me centered, right? It's always that game. You always have to be able to discern, where are you? What do you need to do at that moment? There is no one playbook like that, right? That tells you, okay, you're going to do this, this, and this. So every time you have to step back and figure out where you need to go next. As an Indian woman, I moved to the US from India as a graduate student and have been working here forever now. So as an Indian woman working in science and global health, I found myself in rooms where I was the only woman sometimes the only woman of color, or in my earlier days, the youngest voice at the table. In those moments, what kept me going was remembering where I came from, the women who have shaped me, the communities I worked with, and the responsibility I felt to use whatever access I had to open doors for others. For women in STEM and for African women in STEM, I would say. And it's about forging your path, who are forging their path to new territories. I would offer saying that don't wait to be invited into spaces that weren't built with you in mind. Create your own spaces of influence and then bring other women along with you. The more women you bring along, the better it is for you and them. Your voice doesn't have to be the loudest. It just has to be authentic and grounded in your own experience. Above all, resilience grows in community. Seek mentors, find your peers, share knowledge freely, and hold space for each other. When women support women across countries, cultures, disciplines, we don't just strengthen our own careers, but we shift the system. And that's the only way systems get shifted.
Yeah, and that's so good because what you said about building communities and helping other people come along, especially for women like us who work in industries where we're either the only or one of a few.
Yeah.
It can be a lot to try to navigate that career all by yourself. Yes, you're strong, yes, you're smart, but it wasn't meant to be. Because if you think about it, the other people you're working with are not doing that. They have support. So focusing on, even though it's harder, because it will be easier if I walk into an office building and I have a lot of people to choose from to make up my community. It's
Right.
probably easier. Maybe a little bit harder if you have to go to several other buildings to find the people. But if we have to do that work, it's well worth it because you do it once, you find your core group of mentors, advocates, and all of that, and then that carries you along for the rest of your career, and you're not trying so
Right.
hard every day to do it by yourself. So that is very important.
Yeah. What gives me hope also is like in my several years of careers, I've seen like when I started, there were hardly any women's groups out there. Now I see so many women support groups. I look at it and there's so much hope in there. It's like, wow, women are getting together, forming these support networks, and they're helping each other. We have come a long way.
We have come a long way, and we still have a long way to
And we have a
go.
long ways to go. Yeah,
But there's hope. There's hope. The fact that we've come a long way
absolutely.
gives us hope that we can do more. And like to your point, now that we have more of those groups,
Yeah.
We're beginning to collaborate. And I think when you collaborate, you actually accelerate exponentially.
I mean, one of the famous proverbs, I think it's Kenyan, but it's definitely from Africa, and which I quote quite a bit, is like, if you want to go quick, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
There are different variations of that across Africa that basically says you need the power of community to
Yeah.
actually succeed in the long term. That's one thing I talk about in my organization is you want to succeed, but you want your career to be a sustainable one. You don't
Yeah.
want to burn yourself out trying to succeed. You've been exploring how technology and AI can help people find clarity, find balance. And earlier on, we talked about empathy. And I want to bring it in here because AI is a thing. And there's a phrase you introduced to me, which I wanted to share with the audience, people that are listening, which is digital intelligence. So, in this new world of AI, technology, and digital intelligence, where does empathy come in? And what does it mean for the next generation of leaders?
So you talked about digital intelligence, and I don't know how you define it, but what I think about it is that digital intelligence is really about how we use technology wisely and ethically, not just skillfully. So is that what you understand by digital intelligence also?
Yeah, I Googled it, but I wanted to get your explanation. I know it has to do with how we use AI, I think.
So for me, it's always the ethics part or the empathy part. All of these things always come in. So yes, you need to be absolutely skilled on learning how to use AI intelligently, but also how to use it ethically and wisely and make good use of technology. So that's how I look at digital intelligence. It's basically the ability to combine the power of data with the sensitivity of human insight. And to me, it's empathy translated into the digital world. AI is wonderful. And I'm a very early adopter of AI. I use AI every day for anything and everything, from small things to big things, from very complicated things to my thought partner. I use AI as my thought partner on a daily basis. It really helps me because most of the time I'm working remotely. I don't have anybody with me, no team member. I find it useful that I can chat with it and do a thought experiment with it. So that way, I found it to be very useful for me. It can help me analyze patterns, but the ultimate thing is it's only, or AI is not there where it can actually interpret meaning, contextual meaning, as much as humans can do right now. It may reach there, but it's not there yet. So for me also, when I'm using I really need to know what I'm looking for and what I'm expecting from it. And of course, I look at it as I'm its supervisor, it's my assistant, besides being a thought partner when it's actually doing things for me. I need to look at it and finally interpret the meaning and approve that, yes, this is good, I want to go with that, or no, I need still further changes, right? So that decision is in my hand right now. I mean, AI can evolve to that level later, but for right now, I feel that it's only humans who can really interpret meaning out of it. When leaders combine both empathy and intelligence, they can create solutions that are inclusive and not just efficient. AI can help in this process and make it much faster, much more efficient, much more far outgoing than humans can do themselves. But the ultimate interpretation has to come from humans. The next generation of leadership and our generation need to be digitally fluent, but also emotionally aware. That's how we can ensure that technology will serve humanity and not the other way around.
Yeah, that's so true. I like what you said because sometimes when we think about AI
Yeah.
and the rate companies are trying to develop things in AI are moving, a lot of people feel that ethics is not really in the equation. But with what you said, it is. It can be. At the end of the day, we need to also adopt this technology. We need to be a part of this process. And yes, we'll like to see a situation where there's a larger body regulating stuff, bringing in ethics and so on. But until then, we're in control of a lot of things, especially as we personally use AI in our work or lives. Making sure that we put those things in place will help us move forward. Again, you've heard it here. Digital intelligence is basically knowing how to use this technology and realizing that you have to bring in that part of you that AI doesn't have yet, which is emotional intelligence.
And even if there are regulations legally, in the sense government putting it,
Yeah.
ultimately it will come to you because people can still abuse it or use it unwisely. So nobody will be able to regulate to that level.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it
That's a
has,
good thing.
yeah.
That's a good point.
So it has to come to you. You have to bring in that wisdom or that emotional awareness that AI may not be able to do right now.
Yeah, that's a good point because as soon as you said, I started thinking about all the laws that we have right now that people
Yeah.
still break. I'm glad that you brought that up because sometimes we feel that the solution is regulation,
Yeah.
but regulation is never the entire solution. It's good that it is there,
Yes.
but even now we have a lot of things like I work in oil and gas. You work in healthcare, pharmaceuticals. Most of these industries are heavily regulated. That doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you still don't have the responsibility to do the right thing ethically and apply empathy and emotional intelligence in the things that you do. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
This brings me to everything you said is almost like I'm listening to you and this seems like what you do all the time. So basically you mentor people. You mentor emerging professionals, you mentor women in science and leadership. What are other conversations that you find yourself having with the people that you mentor? What are the things that they're thinking about, worried about? And what does it tell you about what's most needed right now?
As we talk about women here, because I usually work with women, especially in global health, when I'm talking maternal health, my work has always been mostly with women. With women, two themes usually come up, especially with young emerging professionals. The first is self doubt. Unfortunately, that's still very true. I know because I come from that too. Always the question is, am I ready? Can I go up on the stage and talk about it? Can I be in the boardroom and discuss it? Am I ready for it? Or do I need to know everything 100%? So my response to that always is you'll never be fully ready. There'll always be something or the other that you may not know, that the other person in the room may know more than you. None of us are ever ready. And I know this because when I moved from the US working in the pharma industry and decided I wanted to go work in India on this maternal health project, I had never worked in India before. I had no experience in maternal health. I had never worked in a non-profit, and I had no experience navigating the Indian bureaucratic system. Yet, I went there and I worked, and it's been 9 years since I've been doing that. So you start from where you are and you grow along the way. In my case, I started from zero. People usually don't start from zero. They're always somewhere in between and then they go up, but I really started from zero. You'll never be 100% ready, but don't let that hold you back. That's the first thing that always comes up, more with women than men. And the second is about transitions. Many women in their mid career or towards the later part of their career, they want to pivot, they want to make a transition from industry to impact, from success to significance. To them, I would say that your technical skills are transferable, but your empathy is irreplaceable. And I go back over and over again to empathy because that's ultimately what you need. If you lead with that, the rest will follow. The courage to step into unknown spaces and the commitment to learn and adapt is what will shape your leadership. And it's often what creates the most meaningful impact. So go with that. And these are the two big things I would talk about. And I've been doing more and more with women.
I like that you brought that up, especially the second one when you talked about transitions. When we start our career, especially for really smart people, we have a plan. That plan, there are no transitions. It just keeps going up. But in my experience, by the time you get to your mid career,
Yeah.
you will, whether you like it or not, experience a transition because either you're trying to have more impact, more influence, or there's always something more that you want out of your career besides just the technical part of being really good at what you do or being an expert. Now you want to see impact, influence, and all of those things come into place. And what usually happens is at that time we don't know
Yeah.
exactly how to do it because how does impact play into all of this? So I'm glad that you're having those conversations with people. I'm glad we're bringing it up here for people to realize that number one, you're not the only one, and then number two.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
That's another thing why community and talking to other people is very
absolutely.
important because
Yeah.
it will, and then listening to conversations like this make you realize that you're not the only one. And secondly, you have everything you need really, and then just lean on others as well to make
Right.
that happen.
Yeah.
But especially now, because it's a drive, it's always been there,
Yeah.
but it's more public now because of social media. There's always a drive for people to want
Yes.
to make something out of their lives, to leave a legacy,
Now
become.
more and more people are sharing, it's reaching out to more people, and people are
Yes.
learning that way.
Thank you for bringing that up. I know you mentioned your company earlier on, and it kind of sounds like you set a standard for your industry. So
Right.
I want you to talk to us more about that. Apparently, entrepreneurship is also one of the pivots you made. Please tell us a bit more about your company and what drew you to found that company and the experience you had.
Yeah, that was early in my career. I started out as a scientist, a drug development scientist, or working in a pharmaceutical industry. And for people who know a little bit about this industry, you know that the drug development process or bringing a drug to market, right, is a very complex, long, expensive process. And at the end of it, the success rate is very low because many drugs that you discover will fail along the pipeline before one can reach the market. And the numbers are like, I don't know, 1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000 drugs will make it to the market. And it's about a 15-year process. It's about, I think, more than $1 billion to bring one drug to market. It's a very complex process. And I was in the middle of that process. At that time, I was in the Bay Area, and there was a lot happening on the technology side. This is around the dot-com days. I don't know if people know or not. Here, this is in the late 90s, early 2000 timeframe. So the whole idea of that you can use technology to streamline and to expedite the drug development process within the pharmaceutical industry was something I was struggling with quite a bit. And I was, kept thinking about that. How can we have so much technology here, and the pharma industry being the highly regulated, the most regulated industry that you just talked about, is very slow to adopt any kind of technology. But that was the impetus for me to think about. I know the drug development in process. I know how it works. I know the inefficiencies in the system. But how can you be bringing technology to make it faster, to make it more efficient and less error prone? So that's how we started PharmaQuest. And through that journey, I learned the importance of listening to our customers and being willing to pivot when necessary, because we had to do that, right? So as we were building the company and talking to our potential customers, pharma and biotech companies, as well as the regulators who were the FDA, we ended up collaborating very closely with the FDA and with the industry to develop new regulatory data standards. And that wasn't the plan we had started with, but we were able to pivot because that was the need at that time. They were FDA, and the industry was who were getting data from the industry in big paper piles that they had to go through. They'll send them a truckload of files for them to review. From that to how can we do it on in those days it was a disk that they would send the data. Defining new standards, FDA was struggling with that, the industry was struggling with that, and we found ourselves in the middle of it. And we were like, okay, we will do it. And so we collaborated with the industry, with the FDA, and it took us about 10 years to come up with this, co-create this data standard, which now, after all these years, is actually mandated globally for any new drug application to the FDA. So that was a long process, and it taught me how to listen to customers and how to pivot when necessary. So the whole entrepreneurship thing taught me to be comfortable with the unknown, because there are so much unknown, so much grays. You can't work in black and white. It's all gray. And how do you navigate through that? How do you feel comfortable in that? Is a big challenge, is a big learning for me. Also, what I took from that experience was your mindset, that every large scale change starts as a small and stubborn idea. You learn to experiment, to iterate, and trust your conviction even when the path isn't clear. And that's what I ended up doing. This same mindset has been very invaluable to me in global health, especially working in India or in any low middle income countries that you go to. Uncertainty is the norm, and solutions often require persistence, collaboration, and innovation. Although these experiences are very different, entrepreneurship in the Bay Area, in the pharma industry versus global health in India that I'm working on, the lessons are more or less the same. And the skills that you need, the mindset that you need is the same. Those have been my learnings from both these experiences.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because you said when you started your company, you had a problem in mind that you're trying to solve.
Right.
But then you say something really critical, which is you listen to your customers.
Yes.
But there was a bigger problem. Because you already put yourself in a position where you listen, you were able to identify that and you were able to get on board with the industry and the regulators and build something. And you had the patience to work on this for 10 years because you're doing something nobody has ever done before.
Right.
And to your point, these are lessons I can apply everywhere. I think with entrepreneurship, you don't exactly have a choice because it's in your face every day.
Yeah.
I meet successful entrepreneurs and they're like, I still don't know what I'm doing, but I trust myself enough to know that I'm going to be able to make the decisions that are moving forward. If we take that and apply it, especially industries that have been around for a very long time, people feel like we're supposed to know everything, and when it becomes a problem, this is what allowed you to move around the way you did, to take certain risks. You know, things aren't always clear, but you trust yourself to ask the right questions or whatever it takes to move forward. That is an incredible point. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about character. You are very accomplished. When people look at someone like you, they're only going to see, oh, she built this company. Now you've told us what happened. We know a little bit more. But on the outside, it looks so wonderful and successful. There's something about being able to start and build that company, work on that for 10 years, move on to so many other things, global health, going back to India, not even knowing where to start. That has to do with the character you've been able to build. People don't see that, but it's definitely helped you be successful. So, can you share one or two character traits that have actually helped you accomplish all those things, keep going regardless of what's going on, so that people will learn from that? And I already said it earlier, it's not just good, success. There are a few things that we need to have as individuals to help us build the character and build the strength we need to carry on. Can you share what it is that has made you this successful?
So, yeah, people, of course, even when we hear all the stories of success, right, we never see, nobody really goes deep down to see what led them there, right? What took them there. So they often, unless you hear somebody's real stories, but people often don't see the pauses or the setbacks that you might have, the moments when you have to step back and rethink everything, right? Those are rarely visible, but that's what really shapes your trajectory. So there were times when I stepped back, when I took time off to either spend more time with my family or to reflect on my next steps or to redirect my path. Those weren't detours. Yes, there was a time off, but really, if you look at it, those weren't detours. They were actually recalibrations. It gave me clarity, perspective, and resilience. And one of the things that I always come back to is I always return to my why. Why am I doing it? Why should I do it? Why do I want to stress about that? So it's this purpose which always steadies me when outcomes are uncertain. Whether I'm working with nurses in Bihar trying to improve maternal health in under-resourced labor rooms, or with regulators and pharma companies trying to set global data standards. In both these contexts, the stakes are high and the path forward was never clear. The purpose was very clear. So you kept going on that. So I think that's very important to know why you are doing certain things. And then I keep going back to empathy because I truly believe in that. This empathy really keeps me grounded. So in Bihar, it meant understanding the fears, doubts, and resource constraints of the nurses, really understanding the meaningful change required, supporting their confidence and self-worth, not just teaching technical skills. And at my company, which I co-founded, it meant listening deeply to the regulators, to the FDA, and the industry stakeholders, understanding their needs and building trust to co-create solutions could achieve alone. It really needed a whole consortium thing. And then strategy is the one that really gives you a tangible way forward, right? Even when your horizon shifts, whether due to bureaucracy, limited resources, new scientific data, anything that might come up, then having a roadmap allows deliberate, incremental steps that will build momentum. Having all these three things, the clarity, the purpose, having empathy, having strategy, over time, basically, you will learn that uncertainty isn't a threat, it's an invitation to evolve, to innovate, and to lead with both head and heart. And that's what has really helped me. I feel like true leadership is holding your intellect, empathy, and strategy in balance. Even when the road is not clear, it's all uncertain times. But if you have these things, I think you will move forward. And that's what you need.
I love that. So start with your why. I don't know what people did before it became clear. I'm sure we knew that, but the reality, what you said is true because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, when things get really tough, it can be very difficult to keep going because you're like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And once
Yeah.
you start asking that question, that means you didn't ask the question before you started doing it. And it's never too late because
Yeah, Adaeze, it was always there. I think people always knew these things, but now we have a language around these things to express ourselves in those ways. With all the advances that have happened in science, psychology, leadership, and everything, we are learning how to express these things and put it out there. But I think it was always there somewhere.
yeah, I believe that too, because we're human beings bringing it to the forefront
Yeah.
now. And to your
Yes.
point, having worked for it, there's a cultural shift from just doing the task to trying to create impact, create a change. It's much more than just doing the task, which I don't think anybody was ever completely satisfied with. Anyway, and also empathy. I'm glad that you brought that up again because I don't think you can ever overemphasize that.
That empathy is also a much more recent term that has really come to forefront. Like earlier in my career, nobody talked about empathy. Empathy didn't exist officially in these words, right? It was always there. People always cared for each other, but nobody talked about it. This is one of the new things that people are expressing and talking about openly.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the new words. It just makes it so much easier for us to put it in words and do it. So, please, before we end our time together, if someone listening to this, hearing your story of courage, curiosity, leadership, and they want to do the same in their own way,
Yeah.
what's one thing that you hope they take away from this conversation that will help them create that impact that they want to create?
And yeah, everybody has their own journey. If there's a takeaway from this conversation, I hope that people realize that purpose doesn't need a perfect path. I'm a very good example of that. You can start anywhere in a lab, a village, or at a kitchen table, in the Bay Area, or wherever, and still create impact. And what matters is for you to stay curious, staying kind, and using whatever platform you have to lift others. And science and empathy together can move mountains. And sometimes they start by simply changing one life at a time. So,
So you've heard Dr. Seema, and I'm very excited that you're here today. So can you tell us what are you working on right now? How can people find you and connect with you?
they can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can connect with me on, via email. And what am I working on right now? I'm continuing in global health, making system changes to empower healthcare providers. The focus is on supporting healthcare providers so they can support the people they're serving. I'm working on system strengthening with mission driven organizations to build cross border teams so that they can go and achieve goals that they have set themselves to do. So that's what I'm working on these days. And people can reach me on LinkedIn. People can reach me via email. It's seemahandu@gmail.com. I would love to connect with as many people. And if I can support anyone in any way, more than happy to do that.
Please, everyone listening, connect with Dr. Seema. She's on LinkedIn and her email is simple. Well, put all that in the show notes. Connect with her, connect with me, and let us know what you've learned from today's conversation, what you've discovered. Is there anything that you're going to take action on going forward? And is there anything that you know now that you didn't know before that is going to help you be successful as a leader? So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Dr. Seema, for joining us.
Thank you. This has been a great pleasure, and I hope continue doing things like this more and more.
I'm excited. And so thank you. Thank you so much, everyone listening. And remember to join us on the next episode. Bye.